Welcome to the inaugural edition of Food, Faith, and Feelings on Business RadioX. We are broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. The mission of Food, Faith, and Feelings is to walk with you on your journey to wholeness. Brought to you as an educational program under the nonprofit Manna Scholarship Fund, our program is designed to help you better understand issues related to your physical and mental diet, what you consume that impacts your head, your heart, and your soul. We are thankful for our business partnership with Paradigm Security and Mr. Rick Strawn for providing this opportunity to come to you. We hope to enrich your lives as he has enriched ours. This edition of Food, Faith, and Feelings is brought to you by Rick Strawn at Paradigm Security. And in fact, he is my guest today.
Hello, Jeannie.
Hi,
Good to
Rick.
be here.
It seems like just last week.
Like last week.
We were here, yes.
You're going to make a regular thing of this.
Yes, exactly. So what we did last week was I turned the tables on Rick, and I got to interview him so that his listeners could get to know him better. And this week he is doing the same so that you can get to know a little bit about who I am at the start of the show. Thank you, Rick, for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. You've got an interesting story to tell. I know a lot of it, and like all people, I don't know all of it.
Right.
But I do know a lot of it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here on Food, Faith, and Feelings.
Thank you.
I love the title.
Thank you.
It's going to be a great partnership going through here. I think I see a lot of good things coming through this nonprofit part of this show.
I appreciate it. I'm excited.
There's so many people need help, need to be reached out to.
Yes, exactly.
And what better way can you do it than social media nowadays? Everybody's on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let me just start off by saying I've known you for several years now.
Maybe 10?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe
it's just 10. Time flies. It only seems like 20 sometimes.
Yeah.
But, seriously, though, it just seems like yesterday we were sitting at that golf tournament and talking about the possibility of coming on Manna board and all that kind of stuff. And
it did start at the Gwinnett Chamber with our inaugural golf Manna Tee.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was sitting there and I played at it, and and I do mean played at golf. But your story, I think it's important that people know who Jeannie is, because a lot of people get the impression that when you go see a counselor, that they've just been through all this schooling, they've got all this background, they've got all this education, they just know what to say and what to ask.
And they know it all, especially as a doctor. They think, oh, you know everything.
Well, exactly.
And that's not true.
But I think most of them don't realize that a lot of people, such as yourself especially, have actually been through, they've walked the shoes that they're preaching about.
Specifics.
And, yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. They know it's not that they've learned it from books or from other people and listening to them and just sitting in counseling sessions. They were there before this journey started.
Exactly.
And many people like yourself, that's what initiated the passion in this journey. Now, I know you come from a family that is, I believe your dad's a doctor.
He is.
And so that part, I know you might have gotten a little push from here and there to kind of go in that, but I think you desired to go into it more than you were pushed. I think that's where your passion was.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so I'm gonna start way back.
Yeah, start way back when you when you were doing little did the dancing or acrobatics and stuff like that.
Yes. So when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I used to do cartwheels in the living room. And I had...
Didn't everybody?
I don't know, but I did. And I had never been to a gymnastics facility ever. But I had so much energy, and I just loved to move. And so I knocked something off of the living room table, and my mother said, that's it. We're going to put you in gymnastics.
Out of the living room and into the into the gym.
So that began my career, my 6-year career in gymnastics from 8 to 14. And I had a bit of natural talent, and I went to a club. It was a gymnastics club up in Kansas City, Missouri. That's where I was. And my father was in school to become a doctor, and my mother took me back and forth to gymnastics and while she worked and all that. But so in gymnastics, you learn certain great qualities, but you also learn that in order to be good enough, or you have to be perfect. And
weight is a goal and a problem sometimes.
Well, that was not my issue.
Right.
8 to 14. I did not think about my weight. It had zero to do with it. But the mindset of being acceptable was that you had to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And so once I quit at 14 because I had some back issues from a bad fall, I quit after one of the seasons, and I was 14, and 6 months later, my body, I wasn't working out 30 hours a week, because we would go 6 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a day. So I was doing a lot of gymnastics while I was going to school. And so 6 months after I quit, my body started developing. I was 14, and
puberty sets in.
And puberty sat in, and things started growing and getting more shapely. And unfortunately, a family member said to me at Thanksgiving, after we had eaten dinner,
I hear it coming.
Yeah, Jeannie's getting fat.
Oh.
In front of the whole family. And I don't know that I'd ever felt so much shame in all of my life.
It really triggered something.
Yeah, well, that and the other piece that I said that I missed in my story is that my parents separated when I was 8 and divorced when I was 9. So I was the only child, and now my family is divided. And here I am doing this gymnastics thing. I learn all these different things, but I developed some amazing friendships. In fact, I'm still really close with 4 people from my gymnastics team today. Wow. And some of them I talk to every single day. So definitely I developed some sisterhood there. And so when I quit, and then my family member said that, I was in 9th grade, and I remember just thinking, I'm going to show her. And so I went back to school, and what they showed back then was this movie about this girl that developed an eating disorder. And it clicked in my head. It was called The Best Little Girl in the World. Mm-hmm. This was in the early 80s. And it just clicked. And I was like, that's what I'll do. I'll throw up. And so from that point forward, it was January through the next couple of months, I lost a ton of weight now. And I purposely will not talk about my weight, nor will I talk about the pounds I lose, because I don't want anyone to get triggered.
Good.
But I learned at that point that in order to be okay, I must be thin. And so, because one of the underlying things I was trying to do is to be loved. And so I lost all that weight. Well, these 2 BFFs of mine, still today, both of them said, Jeannie, you look like beep.
Yep.
And I mean, I'll never forget, Liz told me this on the bus, and Jill and I were walking at a baseball game, and she said this, and I couldn't see it. My brain was in a fog.
Were you real thin at that time because
super
of
thin,
it? Yeah.
Super thin. And so I started to struggle with what's real, like in my head, like, is what I'm seeing real, or is what they're seeing real? And so shortly,
your perception of yourself was different than what they were seeing.
Oh yeah. I looked terrible in my mind. I measured, and I weighed, and I exercised, and I, like Jill said, I remember one morning, like waking up, I'd spent the night with you, and it was like 2:00 in the morning, and you were doing exercise in the living room. Like, it was obsessive. And not only did I have all this mental obsession, but it also later, a few years later, it triggered a biochemical issue. So now I have thyroid issues starting from when I was 15. So now, granted, I had a tendency biologically and biochemically from my family for that, but I have zero doubt that the anorexic behavior started and triggered that.
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize, they think that it's just getting out what you put in. They don't realize that there are nutrients, there are a lot of things that go in that you don't need to come back out. And
Right.
your bottom line is it affects you physically, internally.
Absolutely. Yeah. It
can kill you.
Well, yes. The number one, anorexia is the number one killer of females from 15 to 25. And so it becomes an obsession. You don't see things correctly. You don't interpret things. I feel like I was in a fog for probably 3 years, the last part of high school. And so it becomes this, it just consumes you. And a lot of people who have eating disordered behaviors for years, they develop their identity around it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I am not thin, I am nothing, or I am not okay, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not safe.
Works that way with a lot of addictions.
Correct. So when I was somewhere early year of my 15th, when I turned 15, I had lost enough weight where when I stepped on the scale, it registered a certain weight, and I thought, oh, wow, I can't be fat at this number. Somewhere I still had some sort of logic. And so in my head, I achieved what I set out to achieve, which was I needed to be thin enough. Mm-hmm. Well, at this very low weight, I was thin enough. But based on today's standards, I should have been in a hospital.
Well, a lot of people, anorexia wasn't a particular topic and of conversation until, Karen Carpenter. Mm-hmm. Once she actually, and it was publicized that she died from anorexia.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden it became something where people could come out and talk about it.
And I think that happened in the late 70s.
I believe so.
So this is right before, this is literally right before all of my stuff happened.
I was wondering where that happened in relation to you.
Yeah. So after I hit that certain weight, in my mind, I realized that I wasn't fat anymore. And so what that did in my head was it gave me the permission to eat. So what I did was I would eat, but then I would get afraid that I was going to gain the weight back, and then I started vomiting.
Yep.
And that actually became the thing that I did the next 3 years.
That's a long time.
It is. And for a child, so I was a teenager, right? 14 to 17,
years as
18.
Far as body.
Yes. It can do a lot of damage, and sometimes it just becomes such a, it just becomes that cornerstone.
The whole focus of what you're doing.
Yeah. And getting through, those are really tough years anyway.
Oh,
you don't know who you are. You don't know who.
Trying to find yourself.
Who you're loved by, who you're liked by, if you're safe. There's a ton of things that happen.
And being loved at that age is very important. From whether it be from, your peers, your parents, mm-hmm. A boyfriend, a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. That's something that you want to feel like you're loved so that you feel worthy.
Correct. Well, and because of my experience, my belief system is nobody under the age of 18 needs to be on a diet. Nobody.
I totally agree.
And if you have a child that is rapidly gaining weight, you need to get them as soon as possible to a therapist to help them deal with whatever they are trying to swallow. Mm-hmm. Because our eating behavior is a mirror to our relational behavior and to what we need.
It's making you feel better about something.
Correct. Well, it's fixing something.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Just like drinking. It makes it, whatever it is, go away.
Exactly.
But the problem when you get older is that you have so much more stuff to uncover because you've made so many choices and decisions based on faulty beliefs that it just becomes more difficult to to change and alter the behavior. So the earlier the intervention, the better. And I don't believe that children need to be on a diet until they're 18 because their body is going through so much.
Well, there's so many changes just going through, and that's your growth period, your formative period of all your body, whether it be external or internal.
Yep.
All those years, and if you start screwing with that and your metabolism and everything else, it can just mess you up for life.
Yeah. Well, so let me get back to my story.
Yeah, let's go.
So when I'm 15 and I'm, purging, one of the things my father had learned in his own recovery process is you let me know when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Know that saying very well.
Yeah, I know it's an AA, NA. It's in all the A's.
Well, it's the bottom line of addiction.
Yeah.
No matter what your addiction is.
Yeah. Well, and through all of this, my dad sort of became my hero. Like, if he can do it, then I can do it. And so I went into actually one of, I think, the only 3 treatment programs that were in the United States in the early 80s. I think it was 1983. And
That's amazing.
I went in, and it was in Kansas City where I lived at Menorah Medical Center. The hospital is no longer there, but they had a specific unit for people with eating disorders. And it was in a hospital. I was in a medical hospital, and I had a psychiatrist, and I remember Dr. Olmo. I hated him. Sorry,
we all hate those doctors.
Anyway, I just didn't jive with him. Anyway, so I was in there for about 6.5 weeks, and turned 16 in the hospital. But I had gotten a pass and came home, and my parents threw me a surprise sweet 16, and a bunch of my friends from school were there.
Awesome.
And this is back way before social media, and so a lot of people actually knew what was going on. But what I found is that they didn't shame me; they supported me.
That's great.
It was fantastic. And I know a lot of people nowadays don't get that. Even though eating disorders is far more rampant than they were back then.
And far more publicized.
Right. And so I was just very, very thankful. And I was released early December, right after my birthday. And for about 3 weeks, I did okay. But then stuff hits the fan.
And the relapse starts.
And my relapse started.
Yep.
And so I continued on with an outside therapist because, again, back then we didn't have 5 levels of care. We had 2. Mm-hmm. We had in the hospital and we had outpatient therapy. Mm-hmm. And so, we've definitely grown, we've gotten more sophisticated, and the landing is not as bumpy as what I went through. But I would say the next year I continued to binge and purge, really struggled. My weight vacillated 15 pounds because of what I was doing, doing lots of damage to my body. In fact, you can see this, but a lot of people can't, but I have a broken blood vessel. Mm-hmm. On my left eye.
From purging.
And that's from purging. Mm-hmm. And it'll never go away. I also had a ton of issues with my hormones and my eyes and Raynaud's. And I just had a ton of stuff going on. So my high school years were really uncomfortable and very unfortunate for me. And then when I went to college, I went away to college. I was 17, not because I was too smart, but because I started in Mississippi and their time frame was different. So their cutoff was different. And so I went to college and still struggled, not as much during my freshman year in college, but between my freshman and sophomore years, my dad had already gone to a program called Caron. It's the Caron Institute, CARON. And they had a 5.5-day intensive, what we call psychodrama. And what that means is you go in and you enact, like you're on a stage in a play, whatever is going on inside of you, which is really powerful, and it brings up a ton of emotion. And so what I was able to do is, ironically, this man that was my hero, I beat up because I was mad at him for leaving. So when they divorced, I deep down inside, that little 8-year-old inside of me was really hurt because my daddy left. And so I got the anger and the rage out, which last time when you and I were talking, I talked about the seed that we have to get to. It's the core that goes on inside of us is pain. And if we don't get rid of that, it will drive our behavior. It will drive our life, and it will destroy us.
I think generally the pain that's actually causing it is, you very seldom realize what it is. You got other stuff that you put that pain into and consider it, this is what I'm hurting about, this, when really it's a lot deeper.
Right. And then, as we grow and we have relationships and friendships and jobs, and, we'll carry that pain and we'll sling it on everybody. Well, I'm mad at my dad, so I blame it on my boyfriend, or I blame it on my boss, or, whatever. And so
always somebody else's fault.
We find ourselves feeling the same way over and over and over again. And that is really when we find ourselves in the same pattern and the same dynamic in this different relationships, the problem is me. It's not you. And so after I did all of this work at this program, it was like God took the light switch and went, okay, that's done. You got it out. And I literally walked out of there at 18 years old, and I never purged again.
That's unusual. A lot of people have a lot more relapses than that.
Oh, yeah, I know. But
it's difficult. That's
why I encourage people that once you've got a hold on the behavior and you think you've got it right, you keep working. Because that stuff and those belief systems will continue to follow you in your life until you take hold of them.
Well, they'll tell you that you're all cured and well.
Right. Well, I don't do that anymore. Exactly. I don't have that problem.
I don't do it as much.
Okay.
Stuff like that. I mean,
yeah, right.
People convince themselves that they're well because they don't do it as bad as they used to.
Correct.
Which is nuts. Which is why you need treatment.
We don't use the word nuts.
I know, but I did.
I know you used that about you.
I did, and it was about me. It's all about me.
Right, exactly.
Go ahead.
So, anyway, I continued to see my therapist up in Kansas City, Judy Moore, and it literally was because she was so freaking cool that I decided that that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, it was like the thing that I learned, and I developed some really good insight, and I liked her. I liked the way she was, and I would say that a large part of my personality actually comes because she was very cool, very laid back. She said the F word. She wore fun clothes.
I got to meet her.
She's in Kansas City. Honestly, I don't know if she's still alive, but she was very, very, very important and crucial to me in my life. And so I went through college, got my degree in psychology, my first year in college was not so great. It was not. In fact, the lead professor of the psychology department at Rhodes called me, Herb Smith, and he was like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because your D's don't show it. I was like, oh, whoops.
We're not seeing your passion, at least on this field.
But again, during that year, I was still binging and purging. And so my thought process was real. I mean, people that usually have eating disorders are really smart. They're very motivated. I mean, if you're hungry and you don't eat, that's a lot of motivation. That's a lot of self-will. Mm-hmm. And so I say that people that have eating disorders can do anything that they want to do when they grow up and when they get out of it. They just got to figure out how to get out of it. And so that's why I say keep working.
Well, a lot of people think it's just willpower, and willpower is really has nothing to do with it. You can be a very strong willpower person and can't overcome your addictions because you haven't accepted you have an addiction.
Right. Well, and a friend of mine, he he says, well, can't you just give them a donut? Can't we just buy them a pizza? I'll buy them a pizza. Won't they eat that? It's good. Like, no, it's not.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work like that. So, where was I?
You're talking about the
college.
The college that you had been
And
through,
then
having the D's.
I finally, once I stopped between my freshman and sophomore years, the next 3 years in college were great. I had a boyfriend, and I did well in my studies, and then I got and I was at Rhodes in Memphis, and then I went to got my master's in Memphis, and then I got into the Georgia School of Professional Psychology, which doesn't exist at this point, but that's what caused me to move to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And when I finished my studies at the doctoral level, the thing I didn't want to do was eating disorders. I was like, I've been there, I've done that, I got that ticket.
I'm full of it.
Mm-hmm. But there was one girl that came into the practice, and she had an eating disorder, and I was like, all right, I'll see her. And because I was like, I mean, I know everything about this.
Then I can relate started.
Yes. And I told her, she came in and she was emaciated and she was gray. And I said, I looked at her and I said, listen, we're going to do this one of two ways, the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you do what I tell you to do. The hard way is you fight me, but then you end up doing it my way anyway. So which do you want to do? So I gave her 1 week. I said, you can come back in 1 week and we'll talk about it. She came back a week later and she was like, I'll do it. I'll go in. And I get chills just talking about that situation.
I can tell.
And so it became my love. Like, oh, wow, this is powerful. Yes, I can help these kids. And so I worked for Alpha Care for 5 years, and then decided in end of 2005, I met a woman across the street. This was in Gwinnett County, and she was a dietitian. And she and I developed a group together, and we just started working together and really enjoyed working together. And so we broke off from our programs and started Manna. We started with Manna Treatment Center. Mm-hmm. And then we brought on some partners and things changed, and we developed Manna Treatment and Counseling. And they all kind of went their ways in 2008, which, everything kind of sunk.
Yep.
And so then Manna Scholarship Fund and Manna Treatment were created. 5 years ago now, I combined the two, and I brought Manna Treatment underneath the nonprofit of Manna Scholarship Fund, so we can provide scholarships for all 5 levels of care now. And so we have 3 levels of care right down the street from here.
You've talked twice about those levels of care. Explain to people what those 5 levels of care are.
Okay. The most intensive level of care is in a hospital where you are medically compromised. And if you can't think right, if you have abnormal blood, if you get dizzy when you stand up, those are issues that mean that you have complicated medical issues. And so you need to have, sometimes that people will not eat, they will not eat so much that their body can't even accept, it's like their body shuts down. And so their body can't even accept food like a normal person. So they have to go through a refeeding process, which is exactly what Karen Carpenter died of. Mm-hmm. And so the highest level of care is medical stabilization or inpatient. Once someone is medically stable, they step down to residential level of care. This is the best length of time for someone to stay in is about 3 to 4 months. A lot of programs will do 30 days, 60 days. Some will require 60 days. Some accept insurance, some don't. But that's a really important level of care, because people can go in, and we have people that will go into a residential program, and then they'll step down into our programs, which I'm going to tell you in a second. And they'll work for a while, and then they'll hit a new bump because of the trauma work that they're doing or whatever. And so then they'll have to go back in. Mm-hmm. And so people might have to go into a residential program 3 or 4 times, sometimes even more. but that is where they're staying at a facility 24/7 for 2, 3, 4 months. Once they've gotten a better hold on their behavior, they will step down into a partial hospitalization program, which is what we have. PHP is, the minimum is 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Some programs will do 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so that is that's a very important part of the process. And I think that if I had something like that, it would make the transition back into real life a lot easier.
Makes sense.
Once someone has done a lot of their good work at PHP, then they can drop down into intensive outpatient, which is 4 days a week, 3 hours a day, sometimes 3 days a week, 3 hours a day, sometimes 5 days a week.
Depending on the need.
Yep. So it's just shorter time, and then from there they will drop down into the outpatient level of care, where they come in once a week or twice a week, and for an hour.
A lot of it's amazing how extensive the process can be to get to the resolution, the final stage, and how bad it can really get.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the core. I mean, the thing that we work on at Manna is the core, the trauma, the pain, and
the problem.
Right, but nobody wants to feel their pain. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to talk about, the bad relationship they had with their mom or their dad when they were growing up. Nobody wants to do that. However, it is probably one of the most important things to talk about, because, let's face it, our parents are two of the most important people that are helping to shape who we are.
I used to call it, we had kumbaya sessions. Yeah. And they drove me crazy. Yeah.
See, a lot of people, especially men, don't like to feel their feelings.
Absolutely. They don't like to talk about them either.
But I'm going to tell you, that is the thing, to be the most powerful and courageous thing that any person can do is deal with the crap inside of themselves.
Well, with guys, we're hard to get there, but once you get us broken through, we talk.
I know. I've seen it. I've made many a grown man cry, and they love me and they hate me for it.
Oh yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Been there, done it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the kind of therapist that's like, I'm less concerned about how you feel. I'm more concerned about what you believe, because our beliefs lead to what we feel, and that leads to what we do. And so when you have that cycle going on, it's I don't know.
That's an interesting point. It's what you believe that you're feeling, or that's
if I believe that you are doing that because you don't like me, I'm going to have one reaction.
Yeah.
But if I believe that you're doing that because you're the problem or you have an issue, then I don't have to carry anything.
Yeah, exactly. The weight comes off of you and the issue becomes theirs.
Yeah. And I struggled with that, I would say, from the time I was 20 and, 14 until I was 40. And that is the primary thing, like dealing with how do I see myself, because I didn't believe that I was lovable. So,
yeah, I think that's an issue with a lot of people, that I don't think a lot of people focus on the fact that, or realize the fact that they don't feel loved.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I break it down into two things. Do you feel loved, and do you feel safe? Because think about it. If you felt 100% loved and 100% safe, how would you describe that?
I can't even imagine.
Heaven.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it would be heaven.
Yeah.
And it's not something we're going to find here.
I just can't even imagine getting to that point. That would be unbelievable.
Right. So the problem is, when we don't feel loved or we don't feel safe, then it causes all kinds of issue for us. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to fight.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going through school in high school, and looking at my sister, thinking that she was the popular one. Everybody liked her. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to her after our show last week, and it was kind of an interesting discussion because she said,
these conversations stir everything up.
She said there was stuff I didn't realize.
Did she listen?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And I forgot to call her and let her know this show was on today, but she knows it's on Wednesdays.
Good.
But, I looked at her thinking she's popular. She didn't see herself that way. Mm-hmm. And she was the most something or other in the school, one of the things, most dependable, I think. But she said it was because she did all the grunt work. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, she's got all these friends. She doesn't see it. And I'm thinking, and she thought I was in that position because the personality was so outgoing and everything. And I'm about as introverted as it gets when it comes to people. Yeah. And I did not feel that. So it's the perception of myself was totally different. Perception of her was totally different than her perception. Yep. We are not who we think we are.
Well, we are what we believe, and we live our lives that way. It's just a matter of who helped us develop that belief system. Mm-hmm. We have faulty messages from parents because they're not perfect. We have faulty messages from media. We have all these. We compare. We do all this stuff, and instead, what we need to do is think, what does God think about me? God loves me. Yeah. He accepts me just as I am, and He wants me to grow.
God has no problem with me. It's my problem that I'm dealing with.
Exactly. So I just want to, I know we need to start closing out, but I just wanted to say that the reason that I do what I do is because of what you just heard. I love people. I love these sick girls and men that come in. I am real and raw with them. We don't allow someone to come to Manna and just kind of float around. If they're not working, we will not let them float at Manna. We're saying, you know what? And when you get serious, come back. But we're not going to let you sit here and take up a spot. And we're getting to that point now where we don't have a lot of open spots. So we are also trying to grow and all that. So that's what we do. That's the heart at Manna. The heart at Manna is to help people who don't want help, who feel like they can't be helped, who want help, who are we just want to help and meet people where they are. We want to be Jesus with skin on.
I love it. Jeannie, I want to thank you for letting me have this opportunity to basically get you to talk about your story, to interview you a little bit in my limited knowledge of addictions, which is not too limited in some places.
You've got a pretty good.
But it's been a pleasure for me to be able to do it.
Well, I appreciate you being on my first show.
I will turn it back over to you.
Okay.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Well,
great show, by the way.
Thank you. I just want to say that to all you listeners out there, Manna is a nonprofit, and we do earn our own money, but we also can grow and thrive because of donations. And so donating for the show, we would be glad to put a commercial on for you. Donating for the growth of Manna, we have the desire to develop a halfway house where our clients can, who are stepping in and stepping down, and they can have a safe place to live. So we're trying to have one of those, develop a home. We're also trying to develop a spot on the south side. And every year we are into granting scholarships for residential treatment to people across the United States.
Well, y'all be sure and subscribe to this when you dare, because I have a habit of forgetting that, so I'm going to help Jeannie remember.
Oh, yeah, I got it right here.
Be sure and subscribe.
I got my script.
So, good. I'll let her get back to work, and I'll shut up.
No, you're good. Thank you, Rick. So thanks, you guys, for tuning in today into our re-inaugural, I say that because we used to have a show a few years back, but into Food, Faith, and Feelings. We want to walk with you on your journey to wholeness. So please, like Rick said, be sure to subscribe to our show. You can find us on about 12 different podcast apps such as Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. All shows are also archived on Business RadioX. Just go to businessradiox.com, select the Gwinnett Studio, and click on Food, Faith, and Feelings. Until next time, I am Dr. Jeannie Burnett, and this has been Food, Faith, and Feelings on Business Radio X.